Hello and welcome to the shed. In today's video I want to show you how to correctly install a metal body hand plane frog and how to adjust it to sit it in the correct spot. Hope you enjoy. So what I'm going to do here is jump in with the Bailey system first. Since that's the most common out there, I'll show you how we put that in there and adjust it to get it in the right spot, and then we'll have a quick look at the Bedrock. Although there's less of them out there, a lot of the modern premium makers are using this design, so it's important to know how both of them work. So let's jump in and get started. So we want to be looking down in here. You can see that the frog is very much not attached at the moment. Now if your hand plane has a spot for this little bit here, this little piece of metal, you want to make sure that that is attached on here, and if you do, you will also have this little screw here, and you want to make sure that's on there. The metal part of that slots over it, and that's for adjusting the frog, which we'll get to in a minute. The other thing is, you'll see that we have machined metal parts. This is a bit dirty, maybe not 100% machined, but you might want to clean those parts up if they're not flat, because ideally they're going to work best if they are. So we grab our frog and we slide over that metal bit, that little piece on the back if you've got it, and we put it into the slot on the screw. And you make sure it's pushed all the way down nice and flat. So you can see we've got two slots here, and they've got little threaded holes below them. That's for our screws here with our washers. So you simply come in, line it up, and we're going to just do these up just loosely for now. Just get them in there, it's just going to hold the frog. Now we want to be looking at that screw put on the bottom here to adjust how far forward that frog sits. So we're seeing here we've got a little gap of metal, a flat part of the metal just here. Now we want that slope to come in and match that that angle here with this, so we want to adjust it. So that piece that has that adjustment here. Now if you don't have that, you've got to manually move this forward and backwards yourself if you don't have that little bit. Most of the later ones do, and this one is from 1910, something like that, so even this had it, so you got to go back a long way for it not to have it, so most of the ones you find are going to have that. So you want a screwdriver that can slide in past your handle without hitting it. So we're going to come in here and turn that screw to advance the frog. You can see that's moving backwards and forward. So you're going to look right here on this edge, and I'm going to move it forward. Now, what you can see here is this is not sitting square, and so you need to be able to sort of move it around a little bit to square it off. And now that's sitting pretty square and flush along that edge down here. It's not going to matter too much if there's a little bit of indiscrepancy there, but you want it as square as possible, and that little piece on the back, the whole idea is it's meant to keep it square. Sometimes it doesn't quite, like this one, so it's out a minuscule amount, and that's going to be taken up in difference in the blade, so you're not even going to notice that. So that's the spot you want this to be sat. Once you've got it there, you then do these screws up as tight as you can get them, and that is how we set the frog. Now that position that you can see there is actually very close to the front of the mouth. Now this is what you'd be doing the way we just adjusted that if we're setting it up for a smoother. Now let me show you what you'll do if you want to set it up with a little bit of a wider mouth than this. So we've got to take this back off again, and you simply just crack those screws, go back to the screw on the back here, and simply just wind it back a touch, and then do these back up. Now you can see here that now there's a little gap. The reason we can have that little gap when the blade moves back and forwards is because we have the bevel on the bottom, and so we end up with a little bit of an extra gap, so we can actually go back that little bit further and have that flat bit, and it doesn't affect the actual blade because the bevel is there. You can now see there's more of a gap there, and that allows for a heavier shaving to come through. And this is actually set to a pretty heavy cut. If I move it back to where I'm doing a smoothing cut, where the blade barely protrudes, you can see there's a clear gap that the tip of my knife can actually fit in there. And so really what you're looking for with that gap, you can't go too big on these planes, but the idea is that the mouth, well, you only really want it slightly wider than the thickness of the shaving you're doing, and so adjusting the frog forwards and backwards is something that you would do. Now, generally I don't adjust the frogs on these on the fly, but if I'm setting it for something or I'm going to do a big thick heavy shaving, I'll adjust that prior to it. But you can see you can move the frog forward and backward just a little bit to give a little bit of extra space based on the size of the shaving that you're actually taking. Now, this being a early 1900s plane, the mouth is tighter. The more modern ones, the mouth is heaps bigger on these, and this is with the frog actually aligned with the back of the mouth, and so you can see it's much wider. So now we're going to have a look at the Bedrock. I've already taken the frog out of this so we can just have a quick look at the differences. We can see here we've got this machined wedge of metal here versus the other one that didn't, and you can see we have a corresponding piece of machined metal here. So we've got a huge metal on metal contact with the frog on this one, and so you need to make sure they're flat more so than with the Bailey. Now you can obviously also see we've got a couple of holes here, and this system uses a pin here, so a pin with a little conical cutout. We've got a screw with a point on it, and the idea is that that comes in held at the right angle, and the tension pulls it down and holds the frog in place. Our pins have a little sort of punched mark on them, and that's so we can face them towards the screw when we put the frog in. Our frog once again has this premium Bedrock style adjustment for the frog, which the Bailey now uses, and we also have that adjustment screw here. So once again we want to set that over the top of that screw, drop it in place. Then we want to come in from the front with our pins and roughly face that little dimple that I told you about, the little punched mark there, and you want to roughly face them towards the screws. I'm going to hold them in place, and we're going to come in on these screws on the back here, and we're going to just loosely do them up just until you feel it grab the pin on both sides. So now it's grabbed the pin. It won't come out, but you can see we can move it. So this is where we'll grab that middle screw and adjust it forward or backward. Now on this one, because it's a recreation, it's got a modern thick blade, and so that frog is probably a good 3, 4, maybe even 5 mil back here, versus on the Bailey where it was only a couple of mil back from the edge of that lip that sort of disappeared downwards, which this doesn't have. So we've adjusted it, then you'll come back in and you want to make sure that you've aligned this. You can see how there's a little bit of rock in this frog, a little bit of sideways movement. You just want to grab that as square as you can, hold it where you think that is correct, and then go in the back there, nip those screws up nice and tight, and that is how we fit and adjust this. The advantage of those pins is we have this all done up. We want to move that frog forward. We got our position wrong with it. So we're going to come in the back here and we're going to unnip those 2 side screws. Alright. We've got them unnipped. So now we're going to go to that middle adjustment screw. And if you watch this, you can see the entire frog. The whole thing's loose, and we can just move it backwards and forwards and just adjust it without taking any of this off. You can see it's moving forward and backward, and we can micro adjust it, line it back up so it sits nice and square again, nip those screws back up, and we're done. And so that is the 2 differences, or the differences that we have between this Bedrock system and the Bailey. So there you have it, folks. That's how you attach and adjust both styles of frogs, whether it's on the Bailey or the Bedrock, and how to actually position them in the correct position based on your blade. So if you like this video, please do like and subscribe down below. While you're down there, do sound off in the comments. Is there something that you do a little bit differently here? Is there some method to where you adjust your frog to? I'm interested to find out from some of you out there. And if you'd like to see another great video such as the one here, do check out the video up here where I go through the anatomy of every type of hand plane. Bye for now.